Welcome back. This is part 2 of my display for the case of the missing yarn for clue 1. I had you previously set up your block, so it should be nice and flat now. And now we can get ready to sew on the embellishment. So what we are going to do is we are going to sew on a question mark. This is what you see in the pictures. So in this one I chose to go with a larger I-cord. I used the embellish knit machine and it gave me a 4-stitch I-cord that was actually fairly open and big, and I liked that for this one. I was going for a more bold look. But you can play around with the size that you want. You can make different I-cords. This time I am choosing to use size 2 DPNs, and I am doing a 3-stitch I-cord. If you don't recall how to do I-cord, you simply do that by casting on 3, and then you knit your 3 stitches. And at the end of those 3 stitches, you slip them back to the left needle. And then you would knit them again until you get to a good length. I did maybe 12 to 14 inches or so. The exact length doesn't matter. But this tail here, you're not going to need this bit, so you can just get a needle and put this right back through the I-cord. So I don't know if you can see this. You slip right down the middle of the I-cord for an inch or so. It's just to secure it in there, make it disappear. Pull that through, not too tightly. Okay, now I'm going to pull this a little bit out, trim it, and then pull that back, and it disappears right in there. Okay, so now you can use this and you can form your question mark. You can either free form it, you can make it small, you can make it big. I've left this yarn still attached to my ball, so I'm not going to waste anything. I can add more if I need to, or I can take some out if I need to. I have here a paper with some question marks in different fonts, and I've played around with it, and I like this one here. So I'm going to cut this out, and I will include this download. I'll put in a link for you to be able to download it if you want. So I have my question mark here, and I'm going to just line it up here and decide where I want it. I think I want it about here. I'm going to make sure I have it straight. And then I'm going to take the end of the I-cord and I'm going to start here, kind of wrap around on itself, and just try to get the general shape. It's not going to be perfect, but I'll doctor it up here in a moment. And then down here I can make the other point. But we have this paper in the way now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully put my hand down on top of the shape, and then I am going to pull out that paper. So now if I raise my hand, it should mostly stay in the shape that I want. Then I have my sewing pins handy here, and I'm going to pin this down, and things will move. That's the nature of yarn. And do my best to get it to where I want it to be. And I'll adjust it as I go along. To get a nice curve. think about here is where I want to straighten it. I'm referencing my paper here that I have right in my view. And I can bring that back down. And I'm pretty happy with that, but let's mark this length. The dot is right there. So I'm just going to take this now. I'm going to fold it back up and then start rolling around in a circle, wrapping around that center point to the size of the dot that I like. I'm going to pin this down and then give it a look. I apologize, my kids are goofing around over there. And okay, that was a little bit too big for what I wanted this time. Let's see, how does this one look? I like that, but I'm seeing that it's kind of crooked, so I'm going to straighten it out. And I'm going to pin it again. See, it's not an exact science. There's no perfect thing here. I'm not getting it perfect the first time. Okay, I like this. So now I'm going to take this and I am going to pull this out till I get right up next to my question mark dot. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to take this and give myself a good long tail and trim it. Then I'm going to take my needle again. I don't know if you can focus on this, Cody. And I'm going to go right through those live stitches. I'm going to catch those. And this will bind that off. Okay, so my little dot popped up, and that's going to happen. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm going to now take those stitches and join it over here to that part of the dot, and then stop and check it one more time. Stopping and checking very often is very important. So that I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to take this needle and now go back down all the way through the fabric. Preferably not pull it off my yarn. And then I'm going to go back up through the fabric, checking to make sure I'm back in that I-cord. And I'm going to follow this I-cord all the way back up to the other end. And I'm going to go slowly and carefully, checking with every stitch that they're going to be tiny. Otherwise, will end up with a huge piece back here, and that will not look very nice. So tiny stitches are best because they will get disguised on the back side. I'm going up and down in between all of the stitches. So I'm either in the stitch or next to the stitch. So that way I'm not splitting the fiber and causing it to get all ugly and weird looking. Also, I'm not pulling too hard, so that way I am not gonna make this whole thing pucker. Okay, I'm almost at the end now. And then as I get here, I'm realizing that this fabric has been in the way the whole time. And that's really the danger in getting something wrong during this whole thing. If you happen to have an embroidery hoop, that would make this whole process a lot easier. Okay, so here I am at the end. And before I do this last piece, I'm just going to double check against my picture here that the dot is where I want it to be. I've actually already adjusted it. And then I'm going to be very careful. If I needed to, I would adjust this because this is the very end of the piece. And this is where it is easy to adjust it if the yarn has moved around at all while you're doing the sewing. If you notice there's a spot in my yarn where it's catching, I did a spit splice in order to join the yarn right here. So it's not that noticeable. It's just a little bit thicker. But I did that because I did not cut my yarn tail quite long enough, and that was the easiest way to attach more yarn so that I'm not weaving in extra ends. I'm going to be very careful here on the very last piece. This is in the way, so I'll move it. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this back up and just run this tail back down through the I-cord to secure it. And then I will cut off the yarn. And then there we will have a finished panel for clue 1. I'm going to do one more. Thing through. Give it at least a decent tail, maybe 2. There we go. And it's done. Now we're ready to move on to clue 2.